All right, now to the panel. I mean, you couldn't cue it any better. Former U.S. Army Intelligence Officer Andrew Peake and London Center for Policy Research President Herb London. Good to see both of you, Andrew and Herb. We haven't seen, Andrew, train attacks in the U.S., have we?
No, we haven't. And I think, unfortunately, we're long overdue for one. You know, al-Qaeda conducted devastating train attacks in London and Spain in 2004 and 2005, and those not only caused dozens of fatalities, but they also led to strategic effects. Spain actually dropped out of the war against Iraq because of that attack. So I think it's a tactic they've used before, and I think they will use again.
Herb, I hate to say this, but it seems like an easy target. Come on, here in New York City, we go into the subway every day. You take the railroad somewhere. I mean, you're on a train. There's very little security. How come it hasn't happened?
Well, it hasn't happened in large part because we think of airplanes as being an attack missile. We think of automobiles as being an attack vehicle. And now we're going to deal with trains. Look, you can't be entirely vigilant in an open society. You do everything that you can, but you recognize the vulnerabilities that exist. There is no doubt that trains are vulnerable. If you've taken the Acela, as I do, going from New York to Washington, D.C., you recognize the fact that aside from a dog that is sniffing for explosives, there is no security that really takes place.
To my point, why hasn't one happened? Am I being naive to say, Andrew, that perhaps our law enforcement is thwarting potential attacks?
I think that's part of it. I think our DHS and NYPD have done a much better job of watching who's coming to the city and watching the transportation networks. But I also think ISIS, which is sort of the standard bearer of radical Islamic terrorists right now, has encouraged people not to attack trains but to drive their cars into crowds, which compared to derailing trains is actually easier for terrorists to pull off. So I think there's a focus of effort on that tactic.
Herb, in this Inspire magazine, the three modes of attack for the rail system would be from inside or outside the train, from the rail itself, derailing the train, or the train station. I know they're all alarming, but what's the most alarming?
Well, look, the most alarming is obviously derailment, because that could paralyze the commercial activities of a given city or region, and that is obviously the great concern. Al-Qaeda clearly wants to do everything it can to upset the American public, to create a sense of panic. And one of the things that you can do is obviously create an environment where you can't be entirely sure whether you can travel from point A to point B. And not only can't you travel, but now you can't be sure about the movement of commercial activity from point A to point B.
I mean, you don't take a flight every day, but Andrew, you do usually take the train every day. That's how you get to work for most people. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
everyday commute.
Right, and even just the track work, you know, at Penn Station, the month of delays it's caused has had I don't want to say strategic economic effect, but it's hurt a lot of people's daily lives.
Yeah.
If you're traveling from Washington, D.C. into Penn Station, and the train stops in Secaucus, and you've got to wait for 2 hours because there's only one line that can get you into Penn Station, imagine if that line is derailed. You've got a real problem on your hands.
We're not too local for you right now.
No, that's
No, you're speaking my language. This is my daily commute. I'll let you wrap it up, Andrew. Do you think, obviously this is added pressure on the Department of Homeland Security, how do you think they're reacting and responding right now?
Gosh, I think they're going to focus on the pipeline coming into the country. You know, I think they have to focus on who's coming in, making sure that cell leaders aren't getting into our borders, making sure no technical expertise is getting into the country.